Hello, everyone. It is 2024, so I thought it was time for me to make an updated video about how I use NotePlan to organize pretty much my life. It is my everything app. I've continued to use it for years now. I use it to organize my daily notes, my project notes. It integrates with my calendar, with my Apple reminders. Everything is housed in NotePlan. It's all searchable there. And today I want to start by showing you a sample of a simple daily note and then a bit of my workflow. And I am going to do my best to keep this video down to more or less the basics. There are some power features in NotePlan if you want to get into the plugins. I do use some plugins that have been created by various developers. They're wonderful, but I want to keep this video concentrated on the core features that are built into NotePlan. So let's get started by just looking at a sample day from December 30th, where I didn't have a lot of projects going on, but I still had things that I wanted to do, things I wanted to reply to. So let's get started there.
NotePlan continues to be my everything app for my daily notes, my project notes, having my calendar, my reminders, everything in one spot. Before diving into the content of the video itself, let me start by showing you what a sample day for me kind of looks like. What I love so much about NotePlan is that it's really a free form note. So I can combine to-do items with paragraph text that I might want to jot out. I can also time block my time, which I'll talk about later. I didn't on this specific day. You can see that I can make different level headings. I can create whatever section I need for that particular day. I'm not confined to a system that only lets me do check or only lets me use the titles that I've used in the past. Every day I have this free form note that I can just pull up. And when I want to jot down things quickly during the day as I'm thinking, I just jot it down in my daily note and then I'll organize it later. Maybe I'll need to put it into a project note, or maybe it was just a note on the spot and I can delete it. Something else that's really nice, speaking of deleting, sometimes you might be tidying up your note a bit too much and you delete something unintentionally. You can actually view revisions here, and that will show you all your modifications of the past. It saves it in certain intervals so that you can pull up an old version of the note in case you need to go back and restore something that you accidentally deleted, and you can choose the new note, or in this case, I'm just going to cancel out of that. So again, I really use my daily note as a scratch pad. It's not just about tasks. I can draft out email ideas, brainstorm list, or just use my daily note as a catch-all for whatever's on my brain, and then I can organize that content later. And I do use project notes to keep track of specific projects, but a lot of times I just start it in my daily note to get it off my mind and into the system in the moment so I don't have to think too much about where this should go. Speaking of quickly capturing what's on my mind, I typically use multiple desktops. So on my desktop 1, I tend to have NotePlan open and my calendar app. On desktop 2 is typically where I'm working, my workspace, and then desktop 3 is like Slack, for example. So while I'm working on my main desktop, I'm not looking at NotePlan. I don't like to look at it all day. I'm working on a specific task, but sometimes you need to jot something down, or you're in a meeting, you need to jot something down. And so I have some shortcuts, which I actually got from the NotePlan community, and I'll leave a link in the video description to a bunch of community contributed Apple shortcuts. So I have one that's quick open to today. And sorry, I didn't want to show you my today note, so I navigated to a different day, but it pretty much just opens up. I can jot down whatever I need, and then I can quickly close it. So all I have to do is quick open to today, and then that just shows me my today note, and I can quickly get that out of mind into NotePlan, or I can quickly reference something. There's also this quick capture, and I can either clip a memo to my daily note. If I have something in my clipboard, I can dictate, I can share a memo, or I can type a memo directly to the daily note. So let's type the memo, and then you can just add in a note that you need to take, done, and that would then add that to your daily note. So if I quick open to today, that added right to the top of my list there. Okay, now that I gave you that quick preview of how I get some of my stuff from my head into NotePlan, let me take you through my process on a daily basis and share a little bit more about why I continue to love NotePlan and some of the improvements I've seen in the past year. To get started, NotePlan supports templates now, and you can create your own templates and save them. You'll see that you can have a template note and meeting notes because there's two different things in NotePlan. There are the calendar notes, which are daily, weekly, monthly. There's quarterly, which I have turned off, yearly. And then there's a notes section. And the notes section is a blank page where you can keep things organized by folders, whereas daily is going to obviously create a new note for each day. So you can see that these are by date. I can navigate them with the calendar or with these arrows here versus my notes, which are all in folders like that. And I can have pages within those folders. So on a daily basis, I really run off of a daily note. A lot of times I'll start at the weekly level and then plan by day, but I'm just going to take you day to day in this example that I'm going to show. So I can start here by inserting a template, and let's just go with my simple daily note, which is how I usually get started. I can just put in my tasks for the day, task 1, task 2. You can tab over to do a subtask. With a plus sign, you can now do checklist items as well. Those can also be indented however you'd like. Everything does also work with drag and drop, so I can drag and drop and move and indent. There's been a lot of improvements with that in the past year. When I move a main task, it also now moves subtasks, so I really enjoy the improved experience there. I tend to just write out whatever I need to do. If you're wondering the difference between a to-do and a checklist item is more something like a habit list where maybe you don't need to check everything off on a daily basis. And NotePlan prioritizes your to-dos. So when I check off all my to-dos for today, you'll see on the 22nd right now, there's an open circle right there because I haven't finished everything. As soon as I check off all of my to-dos, that open circle turns into a check mark. It doesn't account for the checklist items because technically those don't need to be carried out and done every day. Again, you can use a checklist more like for your habit tracker, a packing list, something like that where it's fine if you leave things unchecked. You still finished and completed your day. It's nice to have those two different levels of to-dos versus checklists. Okay, so let me just set up a little bit more here. Maybe I'll have some reflection prompts. In some of my templates, I have some prompts that I carry over. Sometimes I just copy and paste them between days. Again, I keep things pretty simple. And then a lot of times I do draft my social media content. And I tend to use, if you do the triple backticks, I tend to put it in this coding block. And the reason that I do that is because then when I use @ mentions and hashtags, it doesn't get picked up in my mentions and hashtags list, which I want to keep for search purposes. I don't want it to get cluttered with my social media post tags. I usually keep that organized by drafting my social media content in a code block. And again, you trigger that with the triple backticks like that. Something else that's really nice is the calendar view. You can choose if you want to just see one day at a time to focus on one day, or you can do 3 days. I find really nice to use, but you can go all the way up to 7 days. So let's go ahead and leave it at the 3 days like I had it. What you'll see here is this is a calendar event. Actually, I made it in my Google Calendar, a reminder of a birthday. This right here is a reminder. So it's syncing with my Apple reminders here. And this again is a different calendar event, different color because it's on a different calendar. I can use the side timeline and I can add to any of my calendars that I have in my Gmail or in my iCloud, or I can add to reminders and I can add it to any Apple reminder list that I have. So that was something that drew me to NotePlan in the first place, was that sync with Apple reminders and my Google Calendar. Obviously, it works with your Apple Calendar as well. When I'm working on the day, I tend to just look at the 1 day at a time view like this. But at the end of the day, say I'm at the end of Monday, January 22nd, I finished this task. I only finished part of that task. Let's go ahead and highlight both of these and press Command D to just check them both off at the same time. Let's check this off as well. What I like to do is I press Option and I click on the 23rd, and that opens the two notes side by side. When you click Option, it opens another note in another tab. The same thing actually works with your project notes as well, so it doesn't just have to be daily notes. It can be your project notes that open in another tab. I tend to then insert my same template first, and then I can drag this to tomorrow. So I might just drag the entire thing. Maybe I want to reference the task that's already done. Some people are very, very particular about seeing what they did on each day. In that case, maybe you want to copy and paste. I don't care as much about that. I just want to know what I need to do. So that's how I might use this. And again, you can drag anything from one day to another day. I drag and drop quite a bit. If this subtask, you wanted to really leave it on this day, just go ahead and do that, drag and drop, and now only what you need to do is there. Another thing that you can do with drag and drop is you can even move it entirely, just drag it onto the calendar, and you can move it, you can link it, or you can copy it. If I link it, let me open another tab, then it just shows up in my reference area like this, versus, let me undo that. If I copy it, then it schedules it in a different way so that these are not actually linked, and you can add on, but it's in your main note here. And the last option that you had was move, which will obviously move the entire thing. Another thing when we're talking about going from one day to another is synced lines, which are really cool. So you can, again, just go over here, copy synced line, and then if I go to another day and I paste in that sync line, then they are legitimately synced. So if I add on one day, it's just going to take a couple of seconds and it will sync anything that I do. So that's a really nice way if you want to reference maybe in a project note and in your daily note. Using those synced lines is a fantastic way to do that. Let's go ahead and make a project note so I can show you how I use these. A lot of times I'll use them for meeting notes. So what I might do is say that I have a meeting on January 23rd. I might set it up in advance like that. And then I use the arrow to say that it's going to be on January 23rd. That makes it so that on January 23rd, I'll see the project note here and I can just quickly open it up. So that's how I kind of link things. Then I might put in the agenda, notes from meeting, and then say I have another area for my to-do items. In my to-do items, that's where I would put everything I need to do. And then I can associate dates with this. So let's do this on January 23rd. Let's do this on January 24th. Our deliverable, let's say, is January 26th. Now, let's just go ahead and open up, instead of January 22nd, let's move over to January 23rd and January 24th side by side so that you can see here how it looks, and they would be in my references area. A lot of times when I'm working, I like to actually see that in my project note, my today. So let me go ahead and just put in my template again. Here I might actually make another heading and say that I'm working on, this sample project. And what I can do is you can drag and drop. If you do that, it actually moves the item. I don't like that because then it removes it from my project note. I never like dragging and dropping. Instead, what I like to do is command and drag. And then what it does is it drags it in as a synced line. I love that because then if I need to add on to item 2, then it syncs and it stays in my project note, and it's also in my daily note here. I can also option drag, and that creates a copy, but that doesn't sync it. And so I personally like command plus drag from the reference area to create that sync The reason that you don't see anymore the arrow with the date is because it's not in my reference area on January 24th. It's actually in my note. For me, that works out just fine because when you click on the asterisk here, which it's synced, you can see what day it's synced with. So you can easily jump to the day and see what day it's referencing. So I don't need that tag there. Again, just click on it and you'll see that. Same thing if I click here, then I'll see which note it's synced with. So again, I think that just works fabulously well. That's pretty much how I handle taking my notes. When I take a new meeting note, I usually have like one big note for the sample project, for example. And then if I have another meeting, I just put it on top. So then I have meeting with person name again. Maybe I would have that on January 26th. So I just have the most recent always sitting on the top. And that works out really well for me. Another thing that I use very often, if I don't want something to show up in the reference area, but like I want to go directly to my to-do items, like all of these to-do items, what I use here is I copy the URL to this heading, and then I'll say here as my item, work on sample project to do items. Instead of option click, let me command click opens a whole nother window. And you can see it just takes me to that specific heading. So I love that. Again, you can copy the URL to the heading. The difference between copy link to heading, if I do that, let's say I paste it here, it does nicely show the note title and the heading that it's on. The problem for me is that then it creates all these references at the top. That gets really bogged down for me. I prefer not to have it that way. So instead, I really rely on, like I was showing before here, and then copy URL to heading. If you want it to carry over the name, look into a masterful plugin that is Link Creator, but I said I wouldn't talk about plugins in this video, so I want to stay true to that. To create some visual separation, a lot of times I do line breaks, just triple dash and you will get line breaks. You can collapse it down on the heading level. One hack that I have here, because it does actually swallow the line break, which I don't love that it swallows the line break. So you can make the line break a heading of its own. Let's make that a level 2 heading. Then it's not going to get swallowed up anymore. So that's how I tend to do things. Whenever I make a line break, I make it into a header. And then again, it won't get swallowed up. Just make sure that you're using the right heading level. The last thing that I want to show is time blocks. I do like to time block a lot of my days. So let's go on the 23rd here. I'm going to close out everything else. And let's say here, time blocks, decide that I want to do this from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. You'll see that it creates a time block over here, and I can choose what calendar I want my time blocks to go to. So that will actually show up now in my Google Calendar also. Really, really nice. Let's go ahead and do something else. Let's draft this presentation, and we're going to block out the whole afternoon for that. I can also drag and drop onto my calendar. I can add a time block like this, and then I can extend it out. So say it's going to take me the whole afternoon. So that's a way that I can also time block. I can actually just drag and drop onto the calendar. You can also move things around, as time blocks do move during the day, and you can see everything just syncs seamlessly there. Let's go ahead and move it back, extend it out. When you're done, it will get checked off, which is quite nice. And on your Google Calendar, it will also show a little check mark. So that's quite nice. If you're wondering if you can move things, let's say that I didn't finish this, so let's uncheck it. I could move it to the next day like that. If I move over to the next day now, you'll see that my task 2 item shows up here because it's like rescheduling in this way, meaning that it will show up in your references area. Again, as you heard me say before, I prefer that things don't show up in my reference area, so I don't use that method personally. If I wanted to move this event, I would either copy and paste onto the next day, or I would drag it just like this to move it. And that to me works out much better. I like it like that. Then I would just move it into whatever header that I need to move it into. Again, if I was getting into plugins here, there's a way to actually move to a specific header, but I wanted to just stick with the simple stuff in NotePlan, all the built-in features. That's my day-to-day. A lot of times, instead of inserting a template, I might start with a day. If I have a generic type of day that's kind of repetitive for the week, a lot of times I'm working on the same type of things for an entire week it might take me. So I would just select all, copy, and then I would option click the next day. I always do the side-by-side planning like this. Sometimes I have multiple days. You can have as many as you want, as many as your screen will hold, right? And you can close them out just like that. Command V, and then start with that. So say I didn't finish my task 2, delete it here, but it's still here, just like that. I find quite easy. I do a lot of copying and pasting. I do a lot of manual stuff. The reason that I actually like doing it so manually like I do it is because it forces me to be intentional and think like, do I have enough time tomorrow to finish it? It doesn't just automatically schedule it for me tomorrow when tomorrow might already be a full day, or I might already have a ton of stuff on my calendar, a ton of meetings on my calendar. So don't want to give myself as many tasks. So I really like that manual process of copying and pasting from day to day. Personally, every day I make sure that I get my green check mark. I do not like this red, leaving anything opened that's not done yet at the end of the day. I either move things over or check them off. That's how I am. But there are great filters that are built in here that you can see any items that are overdue. You just click on your overdue filter and it will show you everything that hasn't been done. You can create your own type of filters. Like I have a this week filter that just shows me this week what needs to be done. I have a today filter that I can choose to just have certain projects in. You can create any type of filters that you want and you can choose the search terms for it. But this is really just how I use the daily notes. Then your weekly notes, that's a planning area for your entire week. So that would be like for my week 4 here, it would allow me to plan anything for the week. So if I have something like need to do 1, need to do 2, let's go ahead and option click on January 22nd. If I then show my week section, then you'll see my weekly notes show up here. You only see one level in advance. So if I click on my monthly note, for example, you'll see that I do not see my monthly to do in my daily note. But if I instead click on my weekly note and then I open up this January area, that's where you're going to see the next level of things. So when you're in the weekly, you'll have a reference to the monthly. When you're in your monthly, you'll have a reference to your yearly. There's also a quarterly. I have it turned off in my preferences, so I'll never see that personally. So that's really nice. I definitely do yearly planning, monthly planning. Sometimes I do weekly planning. It depends on what the week looks like. All right, hopefully I've kept this pretty simple. That was my goal, to show you some of the updates in NotePlan and just how I'm doing a simple day, which really consists of opening multiple notes side by side and copying and pasting and moving things around as I need to, and then time blocking on the calendar. Also, obviously syncing with my calendar and with my reminders also, which I use. And I love that workflow. So this has continued to work for me for years now. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions, please do leave them. That'll be it for now. Bye.